Welcome. I am John from the Christian Century, and I'm joined today by one of our Voices columnists, Rachel Mann. We could chat about any of the great essays she has written for the magazine, but instead, we have an exciting opportunity to chat about a brand new book that has come out just in time for Lent. It's called A Truth Universally Acknowledged, and it is a 40-day Jane Austen reader. So we are going to talk about Lent and Jane Austen, but before we dive into all that, hello, Rachel. Great to see you. Can you tell, for those out there who don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi, John. Thank you for having me on. So, yes, I'm Rachel Mann. I'm a Church of England, I guess in the States you'd say Episcopal priest in England, based in Manchester, England. I'm a poet, I'm a writer, I'm a broadcaster. I've written, I think, 14 books. It's thrill for me to be a regular columnist for the Christian Century. It's just incredible. I guess another thing that I suppose sometimes surprises people, but is relevant is that I'm also trans. So I am apparently the most senior trans person in the Church of England. My day job is as Archdeacon of Salford and Bolton. So I cover an enormous part of Manchester and are responsible for all sorts of interesting things about which we're not here to talk.
Well, another day we can chat about all the other interesting work that you do. But thanks so much for joining us. So the book is all about the writings of Jane Austen. And in the introduction, you start off by revealing, by confessing that you were not a Jane Austen fan in the past when you first started reading her work. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the journey you have gone on as a fan, becoming a fan of Jane Austen that brought you to this point of wanting to write a book about her work.
Sure. Thanks, John. So, yeah, first exposure to Jane Austen was when I was 16. I guess in the States, in high school system, it would be what, junior year, I guess. Quite late for some people to be exposed to Austen. First book I was given was Emma. And our teacher said, "This is so funny. This is the funniest book, and you'll love it. And it'll times make you angry and times make you sad." And it just made me angry after 50 pages. I thought, this is just about rich people who are talking about horses and who they're going to marry while stood in really big houses in dresses that make them look like they're haunted wardrobes or something. And it was just not a good start. It took me several attempts at reading Austen to get the wit, the humor, because that's the thing about her. You start off and you think, this is really flat and I don't see what's so funny about it. And then you get to the end and you start again. And suddenly you realize, oh, Jane Austen is raising this eyebrow constantly about her characters. And there's Emma telling us that she's this amazing woman. And actually, I mean, again, film was based on this Clueless, that actually Emma is clueless. And that's really funny, but it's also you grow to love her. So it took me several years to really fall in love. I think once I really got into gosh, in my 20s and I read Pride and Prejudice, that was my big breakthrough moment. And then in the UK, we had this big BBC um pro- uh production in 1995 when I was 25. And I think I just blew open the whole Austen thing for so many people, but I'd already fallen in love with her by that point. So
Mm.
that's how I started. And then writing a book. Well, here's the crazy thing, that there I was back probably this time last year, having my morning coffee, bleary eyed, listening to the radio, and a piece of music comes on the radio. I was listening to classical radio, judge me hard. And it was from the soundtrack for the 2005 Pride and Prejudice movie, because there was some big anniversary of the first publication of Pride and Prejudice. And it was like, dare I say it, a spirit moment. I just thought, a book about Jane Austen for
Wow.
Lent, because this woman is so wise and she's funny, but she also challenges us so hard.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about next, is this pairing of Lent with Jane Austen. So when you're having this moment, this epiphany about writing the book, what is it about Lent that connects in your mind to like Jane Austen, and why does this uh idea for a book appeal to you so much?
So the thing about Lent is I mean, I can't speak about US context, but in the UK context, so often it's all about, well, let's just give stuff up. Let's be hard on ourselves. Let's, basically have a downer on ourselves and make ourselves feel bad. Whereas actually Lent is about clearing away so that we can be more fully ourselves and embrace joy, the joy that's offered through Jesus Christ and his death and resurrection uh, at Easter. So if Lent is about reality, and it's also actually about being clearing away for joy. So I thought the thing about Jane Austen, John, is that yes, she's very funny, but she's also really tough. She's real. She does not hold back on talking about real stuff in her novels. Now, sometimes you have to dig. Take a book like Pride and Prejudice. You don't have to dig very far to get this sense of, should we say, near terror at times. What would happens to a woman whose only value is to be found in getting married and having children? And what if there's no real prospect of you getting married? And so she's exposing some of the realities of that marriage market system that was very exchange in the 18th and 19th century. In Mansfield Park, she's actually having a go at slavery in large sections of the book. And so she's all about reality. So, this whole, the Jane Austen industry, which is all about, Empire line dresses and everyone being witty, and it's all about love. Yeah, that's part of the joy. Because, hey, Lent actually should be about love, because love is everything. But it's also about reality. So this is the thing about, working with Jane across these 40 days of Lent, is it gives me space to explore these different moods and moments and inflections of Lent in a way that is going to be surprising, because lots of people love Jane Austen, but maybe they don't quite realize just how challenging she is for our individualistic, dare I say it, late capitalist society.
Yeah. Wow. Really, really interesting stuff. Okay, so finally, I wanted people out there to have a sense of what this book is like. So I'll just say that each of the 40 readings is an excerpt from one of Jane Austen's novels, followed by a reflection from you, and then a very brief prayer. And each reflection, it's a bit long to do an entire one here on the video channel, but I thought maybe you could give us just a little taste of one of the readings. So maybe whatever you'd like to share from one of the 40 days, an insight, a snippet. Would love to just turn it over to you to share a little bit of the reflection in the book.
Thanks, John. I'm going to share a bit from day one, and it's a lovely short excerpt from Pride and Prejudice. So I am just going to read that, and then I'm going to read the final two paragraphs. But just so you don't, a viewer doesn't think, well, that's all a crazy jump from the reading to the final paragraph. In between, I provide quite an extended meditation on marriage and on relationships and on the difference between actual, real love and what we might call the love found in the gospel, and a kind of transactional love and the transactional economics that sometimes gets to play out in human relationships. So day one. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. However little known the feelings or views of such a man may be on his first entering a neighbourhood, the truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered as the rightful property of some one or other of their daughters. How do we view one another, whether we be married, partnered, or single? What is the nature of our social relations and our priorities as we dwell in them? If the Bible holds within it a range of models of relationship, from the faithful, outrageously committed friendship between Naomi and Ruth, and the covenantal devotion of Jonathan and David, through to more familiar marriage relationships, there is, I think, a profound invitation in Christ not to regard one's partner, lover, or friend in transactional or instrumental terms. Even in his letter to Philemon, which speaks of sending a slave, Onesimus, back to Philemon, St. Paul offers a discreet critique of that most transactional bond, slavery. He argues that Philemon, the Christian slave owner, needs to treat Onesimus, the runaway, as he would Paul. In a society in which slavery was endemic, Philemon could have put Onesimus to death. Rather, Paul invites Philemon into a new Christian vision in which Onesimus becomes a beloved brother. Such an invitation, one hopes, offers a route in a slaving society, both to building new horizons of holy friendship and quietly to subverting and, please, destroying slaving relationships. In our context, most of us set off on relationships, marriages, friendships, and life with the very best motives and intentions. Love, which is so much more than a romantic notion, is about growing into the likeness of Christ. It is an action and a work of will and a way of being in the world rather than an emotion. Even the most wonderful marriages, partnerships, and relationships can resolve themselves into transactions driven by selfishness and exploitation. Transaction can be difficult to guard against. Lent offers an opportunity to reappraise our assumptions and hopes about our relationships. As we set off on this Lenten pilgrimage, we have opportunities to ask key questions about our relationship with God, with self, and with those whom we love. How do we reorientate our relationships so that they become ever more life-giving? When is it time to begin again? And crucially, how can Christ set us free to be more fully ourselves within our relationships? Ultimately, what is the deep truth we wish to see universally acknowledged in our society today?
Wow. Oh, so good. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, I wasn't planning this. I'm going to add in one little final bonus question here, and starting with my own confession. Um, I don't think I've ever read any Jane Austen. I'm sad to say. I think in high school I dodged it somehow in my English classes. So what's the best place to start? I mean, it sounds like Pride and Prejudice was ultimately your gateway into being a fan, but maybe your book is the right place to start. I don't know. Can you point me in the right direction?
I mean, look, I wrote this book for people who hadn't necessarily read any Jane Austen. So, it is, I think, I'd like to think that my book is a gateway drug into, the hard stuff that is Jane Austen. Um, I think for a lot of people, and I say, I have friends, some of whom are English academics, for whom the BBC 1995 TV adaptation of Pride and Prejudice was their gateway into reading the books. It's got Colin Firth in it and this starry cast, and it's just brilliant. And I just look, John, I don't think there's ever any shame in saying, I haven't read this, or, I'm not actually that interested in reading that. But Austen is translatable. So, that's one place to start. I also think there is a lot to be said. I mean, Pride and Prejudice is a great way in. If you don't want to actually pick up the book itself, listen to an audiobook version of it. There are brilliant versions of it as well. The greatest of the novels for me is Persuasion, but it is very much, that is a work of I get huge maturity. It is Austen near her death writing just this amazing book. But Pride and Prejudice, it's a sparkling comedy. It's wonderful. You'll enjoy it.
All right. Well, so many places to start. I love it. Thank you so much for being here and chatting, Rachel. For those of you out there who are interested in any of this, there will be plenty of links below that you can check out. There'll be a link to order this book, A Truth Universally Acknowledged. We'll also have a link for all of Rachel's articles in the Christian Century and a link where you can check out her brand new book of poetry. Rachel, great to chat with you. Thanks for joining the channel.
Thank you. And you have a wonderful day.